today in Deep Crypt we are more human than human. I'm probably getting a cease and desist order for quoting from Blade Runner. I am a massive Blade Runner fanboy. Don't know about you.
I'm a moderate Blade Runner fan. I wouldn't class myself as fanboy, but fan definitely.
It's one of the few things in which I'm like, oh, it's my favourite movie, and I don't normally do favourites. We can all see your favourite.
We're avoiding a discussion of what's the best movie in the world today for obvious reasons.
No. His shark will try to eat my replicant. I don't like it. But what on earth has this got to do with you, and why do you want to hear about it? It's because we have also both backed the Free League, that publishing house yet again, Free League's Kickstarter for the Blade Runner role-playing game.
Yes.
Which has just been released in a sort of early access to Kickstarter backers. So we've been poring over PDFs, having a look at them. That's the main campaign book and the first case file, which we will not be reviewing for obvious reasons, but I will be running.
Yes.
Soon. Damien, first impressions of this PDF, this book, the campaign.
So first impression is it's beautiful. Free League have, for us, a reputation of producing extremely high quality work. The way it's laid out, the artwork. So Sid Mead was the designer on the original Blade Runner movie, and this artwork very much fits into his design concept and his design world. The moment you look at it, you know where you are. You know you're in Los Angeles of the end of the first quarter of the 21st century.
Yes, in the world that follows World War Terminus, which thankfully in our world never happened. It's great from every part of this where each chapter quotes some part of the film, like chapter 1, "Fiery the angels fell." And you know the score, pal. If you're not cop, you're little people. It just has. It's filled with all those sort of little carefully chosen quotes from the film that fit.
I can almost hear a Vangelis soundtrack as I read it.
Yes, absolutely. Or possibly Hans Zimmer, because it is strangely straddling both Blade Runner and Blade Runner 2049.
Yeah.
Which is also among my favourite films. It doesn't quite hit the original. But I must admit, when I first saw it, I thought it might do.
Because the core setting for this is some years after the end of the first Blade Runner movie.
2037, I think.
So like 15 years after the end of Blade Runner and about 10 years before the sequel, in that middle period there.
18. 11. Yeah, you're right. I mean, it's around about that. I'm being pedantic.
I was guesstimating.
Yeah, sure. Sorry. I can't help it. I'm a replicant. So it's an interesting choice because there's all this. So looking at we're going to do a first look. We're going to talk about briefly what the mechanics are as we understand them. We haven't run it, so there will be possibility for getting that wrong. But then also the setting and the sort of feel of what this game is aimed at. Because it's set in 2037, it's after certain events that there's something called the blackout, where a lot of data was lost, and it explains the change from the world in Blade Runner's 2019 to Blade Runner 2049's 2049. And you're after certain key events with things like the Nexus 6 effectively not being present, Nexus 9 starting on the Blade Runner Force, the Rep Detect unit, the RDU.
Yeah, so the Tyrell Corporation has folded completely, and a new corporation, the Wallace Corporation, has.
I think Tyrell's still active, but in a very specific minor role.
Right,
but it doesn't matter. You're broadly right.
So they're no longer producing the Nexus 6 and the 8s that came after them. But the Wallace Corporation have released the Nexus 9, which are essentially they pass for human. They're heavily not controlled, but kind of augmented with certain safety protocols and certain behavioural overrides, etc., which means they can never do, allegedly can never do what the Nexus 6 did and go on the rampage, as it were.
They're
They are
obedient.
safe and
Yes.
obedient is the setup.
Which, of course, if you've seen the film 2049, you'll be like, well, maybe not so much. In some of the previous, not trailers, but sort of teasers for Blade Runner 2049, there was a scene where Wallace introduces, I think something extras on the DVD or something, there's a scene where Wallace introduces the Nexus 9 to the people who are controlling the ban, and effectively has a Nexus 9 commit suicide in front of them. It's pretty gruesome, brutal. It's meant to highlight the sort of obedience of the Nexus 9, the N9s. So it's interesting because you're not coming across replicants with a 4-year lifespan.
Yeah.
The world is not quite. If you only have seen the first film, this will be familiar, but not as familiar as you might expect. So it's an interesting choice. Kind of having the best of both worlds.
Yeah.
Go on. Sorry.
So yeah, there is obviously a lot of anti-replicant sentiment. It's also set up that you've got this kind of human underground that is pro-replicant. They've set up these tensions within the world for whatever is about to happen in your campaign, I guess. And the core of it is that you play a Blade Runner. It's the Blade Runner RPG. Why would you want to play anything other than a Blade Runner?
Which means, playing a Blade Runner, you are going to be playing sessions that involve investigating cases.
Yeah.
Maybe they won't all be about finding a replicant, but they'll probably all be about investigating what might be a replicant situation. But of course, it's not going to be a case of finding a Nexus 6, because presumably they've all died out, having only a 4-year lifespan, unless there is something going on. I'm sure there's scope for a GM to Game Runner. Game Runner, yeah, quite. I need to get my head around it. To introduce like a batch of Nexus 6s that's been in suspension or something like that.
Yeah.
Entirely possible, but most of it's going to be to do with things like the Replicant Underground, hunting down Nexus 8s.
Or if the other side, maybe hunting down the human supremacists and protecting them.
Yes, exactly. You're also supposed to protect Nexus 9. So
the key themes that it states on page 19 of the PDF, pages 19 and 20, are sci-fi action. I'm not going to read the whole little box on each one, but sci-fi action, character drama, corporate intrigue, moral conflict, and soul searching. So that gives us an idea of where this is pitched at in the role-playing genre, in the role-playing milieu, I guess.
No, you're not strapping on your Blade Runner issue blaster and going off to explore a dungeon type Tyrell building, shooting replicants around every corner. At least I wouldn't expect it to work out like that. I'd be a bit disappointed.
I think there's a heavy influence on the character drama, or not heavy influence, rather heavy focus on the
emphasis.
Character drama emphasis. In the way characters are designed, in the way, just in the way it's set up. The character design is quite reminiscent of other 3D games we've played. There's some, I called them themes, you used another word.
I think there are themes and I think there are concepts. So
yeah.
I think there are the way that Freely build a game mechanic, and then there are themes that they regard as being the most, maybe not the most important, but what they think are fundamental themes within role playing.
Yeah.
And so we've looked at Tales from the Loop, we've looked at Alien, now we're looking at Blade Runner. They have some different themes for sure, but they also focus on many of the same ones. And some of the game concepts, although the mechanics aren't precisely the same across those, there are overlapping features which...
We talked, I get the impression that Free League comes from a place of, okay, what world are we building? Whether it's an existing property, whether it's based on on the artwork that Tales from the Loop is based on. You know, what is the world we're creating? What is the character-driven focus of what is the role-playing intent of this game? And then how do we introduce as few mechanics as possible to make that work?
So, some systems feel like they're a mechanical system for a role-playing game around which a world is built.
Yeah.
And that's fine.
Yeah.
Nothing wrong with that. But free league games very much seem to be let's build the world, and then how do we build a mechanic to fit this?
To interact with that world, yeah.
So this might have some degree of effectively a similar concept to like a stress mechanic that's very obvious in the Alien game. I mean, there's a stress mechanic within Tales from the Loop. It's not the same as the one in the Alien game. It's called the same thing, or in this, I think it's
resolve.
Resolve, yeah. So you'd lose resolve points, and those will have a consequence that a human might go off and become sort of catatonic, or a replicant might go on a rampage potentially if you breach those. In Alien, when you run, stress operates in a rather different way. There's still a fundamental mechanic. We have to have a mechanic to deal with the stress that a character will deal with, and that's not present in every single role-playing system across the board, but is present in every role-playing system we've played from Free League. And I think we're talking about, so you've got systems that try to model reality as closely as possible using dice and the figures on a character sheet. GURPS is looking at you, which is again no bad thing. This system is not that kind of system. We probably better start by then looking at what it actually is. But I think you put it quite clearly about it. It's about this minimal. What do we need and no more to achieve the role playing goal?
Nothing feels like a gimmick put in for this is a cool mechanic. Let's insert this somewhere. It all feels
precisely.
So the character creation is fairly straightforward. In this game, you can play a replicant. The N9s are now able to be Blade Runners. You have to be a rookie if you're an N9 because they're very new, so you have to have only just started on the force, essentially. So you can either choose or roll up for various things. You can choose or roll to be a human or a replicant, and then choose or roll your archetype, which are not classes as such. It's not a class-based system particularly.
No.
It's your archetype. It's the type of things you're better at compared to somebody who isn't that archetype, I guess.
Having a look at the sort of options there for archetypes. So there's on the human side, archetypes are different from the replicant side. There are overlaps. So a human can be an analyst, but replicants are much more likely to be an analyst. Replicants can be something called a doxy, which means they're much more sort of like seducing. They're a bit like I can't remember the name. She's probably a bit more like Pris from the first film.
More charismatic and more socially skilled.
Yeah, whilst the equivalent on the human side of things is called a city speaker, and that's sort of to do with the Gaff character from the first film. Perhaps would have probably been a city speaker. And both have got inspectors, but where with the human you could be an archetype that's a skimmer. So if you've played the Blade Runner Westwood game, Goozer in that, spoiler alert, sorry, Goozer in that is a skimmer quite clearly, but a replicant doesn't have that option. It's not one of the things. So there's that setting up of a difference of identity because replicants are obedient. I think it's got a rule for it's possible to be a secret replicant. That's kind of fun.
Absolutely.
Have the decade rule, perhaps. But so you've mentioned rolling up. It's a points based system, right?
Yes.
So you do have the control to spend your points, or make these choices, or you can randomly. I didn't think that don't think you would assign attributes.
No, so you get
randomly, so you have to choose those. Right?
Yeah, you can. So you can then either roll or choose for your years on the force. Rolling would probably be, in my opinion, the preferred method. And then you have rookie, seasoned, veteran, or old timer. There's 4 core attributes, which are strength, agility, intelligence, and empathy. And they're not numbered. They're rated from A to D, with A being the best, D being the worst, C being kind of human average.
To fanboy for a moment, because if you watch the first film, when you see the inset photos and things of like Roy Batty or whatever, he's rated A in body and A in intellect, and someone like Leon is A in body and like, I can't remember what he is. It's probably a D. But I mean, it's Sora is an A physical, B mental.
Yeah.
That kind of thing. And so it's an echo of that. Anyway, sorry.
So you start with a C in everything, which is the human average. A rookie will get +4 steps to add to that. Seasoned gets 3, veteran gets 2, old timer gets just the 1. So each step is a step up from C to D. Sorry, from C to B, B to A. So if you wanted to get your strength up to A, you'd have to use 2 of your points, 2 of your starting attribute points to do that. Replicants get an extra point, which has to go into either strength or intelligence. Agility. Strength or agility. And you can also lower an attribute down to D to get a bonus in something else. So there is some flexibility in there to have different characters having different base attributes.
So as you go up from rookie all the way up to old timer, rookie only Nexus replicants are only available at rookie level. But as you go up years on the force, it reduces the amount of points you have for your attributes, but it increases massively the amount you have for skills. Specialties, promotion points, and chin yen, which is basically cash.
Yeah.
So there's a trade-off.
Absolutely. There is. So you could be an old timer who's essentially physical attributes are falling apart, but has learned way more skills, has learned more specialities and more tricks of the trade, has obviously got further in their career, and has got a bit more cash behind them. It's an abstract cash system. It doesn't really use money as such.
You're not looking in the heart. You're not going to be counting how much. So chin yen is the currency. And you're not going to be counting, I've got 10,000, or I've got 1,000 for retiring this replicant, or saving this replicant from the replicant, anti-replicant, or whatever. It's as you say, abstract, because it doesn't need to be.
Yeah, it doesn't need to be exactly. It's not a money management game. The dice system is quite interesting.
Yeah, how does that work?
So you have. It uses 4 different dice. We've got D6, D8, D10, D12, and that is dependent on the rank of your attribute score or your skill. So rank D is a D6, which is noted here as feeble. Rank C is a D8, which is average. Rank B is a D10, which is capable. Rank A is extraordinary, a D12. Any roll of 6 or above on a die counts as a success. So obviously if you're rolling a D12, you've got a much greater chance of rolling 6 or more than you have on a D6.
Yeah.
When it comes to skill rolls, so you have your attribute rank and you have your skill rank. And then you roll the 2 dice that are associated with each of those ranks. So if I had a strength of A, but my close combat is D, I would roll a D12 and a D6. Any 6s count as successes. Any 1s count as critical failures. There's a push roll mechanic and all sorts of other stuff that we can come onto when we do the full review, I think. But I think that's quite an interesting, dynamic dice rolling system.
I don't think it's not something I've seen in the Free League game before. It's like Tales from the Loop like that, is it?
No, usually it's one die and maximum is a success.
Each point you get is a D6 to roll or something. So it is something that I've seen in a game called Aegon, which is from I think it's Evil Hat Productions, the people who make Blades in the Dark, and that's so it's not the first time I've seen this mechanic, but this is a slightly different implementation. I'm not saying it's the same as in that one. It gives opportunity for quite a broad range of outcomes, I suppose. You could say, well, why don't you? I mean, what's the percentages? And I think somewhere in the book there is a table that tells you.
There is a whole table on it, yeah.
But I mean, again, that probably is that you're trying to avoid that metagaming kind of. Well, what's the chance of success on this?
Yeah.
How would you ever know that, right? You make a decision based on a role-playing decision, and then make the role that's required afterwards. It then gets into, after skills and the sort of the standard attributes and such like, we get into things like downtime rules and key memories and sort of key relationships and such.
So that's interesting. Those are interesting concepts that I think I've seen. Well, that I know I've seen in other Free League games. The idea of a key memory, which is obviously very interesting if you're a replicant, because is that a real memory? Is that an implanted memory? You know, if you're only a year old, how can you have a memory of, you know, a fight with your sister when you were 8? But
because you were built and you've been born into the world as a full adult with never a time as a child. Yeah. Fascinating.
And you know, Tales from the Loop have an anchor person who is
a key relationship.
You have your key item in Tales from the Loop. You have your key item in this.
There's a key item in so there's like
Alien.
A signature item in Alien
item,
that can help you deal with stress.
It's called signature item in this as well. Apologies. Yeah.
Oh, is it? Sorry. Yeah.
So yeah, those can help you reduce your stress at certain times. In Tales from the Loop, it counted as 1 automatic success, possibly 2, depending on what it was in the situation.
So, I mean, that's a very basic idea of how it works. The number of skills, let's just talk about that very quickly.
I think there's 13.
Yeah.
So it's
not the sort of like super deep. You've got a firearms skill and you're a specialist in the sub 9mm caliber, but you'll get a penalty in anything above a 45 caliber that you might see in some very, very specific systems. We've previously said before that our preferences tend towards either you go for a relatively detailed skill system, if it is a skill-based game, or you keep it sort of more broad and general, where we usually favour something like this, where it's there's a skill that covers lots of situations, and it helps with a sort of more general build of a character that you can keep the identity of in your mind much more easily. And I'm good at shooting things versus I'm good at
and it allows problems. It allows whoever's running the game to then adjust difficulties appropriate for various kind of nuances within that skill, I think. So 12 of these skills are tied to an attribute. So, for example, close combat is strength, mobility is agility.
Yeah, this is an interesting feature.
Medical aid, intelligence, connections, empathy, etc. Apart from driving is linked to the manoeuvrability of the vehicle. And I think that's quite important because there's quite a big section on chase mechanics.
Yeah, there's also some vehicle combat. And of course, you've got access to a police spinner, which is iconic for both films. Things are going to happen. You're going to be in pursuit at some point. You can also have ground chases. So the vehicle will be. It makes a lot of sense. And I think it's an elegant solution.
Yeah.
And this is what I'm taking from all the mechanics within this game, and it's true of a lot of what I've seen from Free League is that they go, as you say, they don't go for gimmicks so much. They go for what's the elegant solution to what we want to back up the role-playing world.
Yeah.
This game is, with that, you've got all the skills you're going to need. You don't need to know precise little tiny details.
But then there's specialities that obviously.
Those
as a rookie, you don't start with any, but your years on the force will give you specialities. So I looked at these, and at first I thought they're a bit like feats-ish. They're a bit more specific than that. Some of them are more general, some of them are more specific. For example, the sniper speciality that I'm just looking at, it's very specific. You get an advantage to firearms rolls when firing a single shot, not full auto, at long range or more from a hidden position. That's very specific to a situation. Musician, you get an advantage to all manipulation rolls in situations where singing or playing an instrument is helpful. The game runner has final say. That's a bit more open to interpretation.
Yeah, martial arts, you get an advantage to all close combat rolls when fighting unarmed. It's much more sort of. Yeah, it is like that. It's reminiscent of the talent system within Alien.
Yeah.
I mean, it's inevitable when so this isn't plug and play with Alien. It's not just a reskinning of Alien. It's not just a reskinning of the Tales from the Loop rules. But what they've done is take the things that work in those systems that there's no need to fix because they work well, they're not broken, they do a good job. Taken those and then put them in here and seen whether they fit. Where they fit, they've kept them very close to the way they were. Yeah. Where they don't quite fit the feel, they've tweaked it to something that, okay, I haven't run, but years of experience of playing games, I've got an idea of, I can see how that will work. I played something that used a similar mechanic at some point, it worked. It's easy, it's not, I'm not going to be scratching my head getting a calculator out to work out what I'm doing. It's not going to interrupt play.
Even on a skim-through read of this, I can kind of get the feel for how it's going to work, how, as a player and as a games runner, things will work.
Initiative's a bit interesting, isn't it? Because it's card-based.
And only card-based. It's card-based in Alien, but
or dice roll.
You have an optional of using the dice roll. I think it was in Tales from the Loop, it was dice rolled.
As I recall.
Yeah.
I mean,
there's not a lot of combat.
We often play on VT. No, true. We often VTT use VTTs for playing, which handle stuff for you anyway. But I mean, stupid me, I was like, okay, well, that means you have to have the starter set to have the cards. Whilst you were saying, no, it's really economical. I was like, I suppose you could make your own. But no, you just get the playing cards and take out the face cards.
Yeah.
I'm not the brains of the operation.
A suit of any standard deck of playing cards, take out the Jack, Queen, King, Aces 1 to 10, nice and easy. Because it is a 1 to 10 system.
Which has an interesting consequence.
Because you can't draw the same initiative as somebody else. So there's no deciding who goes first on a round. Everybody will have a different initiative.
You can,
I can't see if there's any.
It's got rules for surprise. I don't believe there are. There's a surprise round. That's when the game run deems fully surprising, you automatically get the number 1 initiative card in the first round. All other combatants, including others on your side, draw initiative normally. So your ambush is page 6. So that isn't. That's Does the GR? I have to get my head around that. Does the game runner decide that you have surprise? Obviously, it fits the circumstances, which it doesn't. There's an option to exchange initiative, but you can only exchange some initiative with someone who's comes after you in the turn, and they immediately act. So that's an interesting.
And the lower the better as well. So 1 is a better initiative than 10.
Yeah. But you might want to see what someone was doing.
Yeah.
You might want to give someone else a chance to go first, so being able to exchange with them is.
Yeah,
that's nice. I think that's nice.
The speciality fast reflexes. You get to draw an additional initiative card at the start of combat. Choose the card you want to use. So that's the only way I can see to modify your roll, as it were, your choice. Apart from swapping.
Off the top of my head, some of the specialties are not necessarily all open to everyone. I think, are they not tied into which archetype you had? So. Maybe I'm wrong about that. But that doesn't matter. If you like this book, you'll read the rules. Yeah, don't take this as what the rules are, and take us as gospel.
So the most specialties you can have is 3, and there's a list of 3 specialties for each archetype.
Yeah.
So
we've got the sort of thing with ranged combat. Unsurprisingly, ammo is an interesting one. As a Blade Runner, you're assumed to have ammunition, all the ammunition you need for your weapons. You simply don't need to count bullets in this game. Cool, because there's no bullet counting, almost no bullet counting in Alien, but you run out of bullets when you get a face hugger.
Yeah.
Here that's a different thing, because when do we see Deckard finding his guns empty and having to reload? When do we see Kay doing the same? Or Joe? anyway, full auto fire. It's the standard rules that you'd expect. This is quite a lethal system, it seems to me. You've got health. The guns can do quite a lot of damage to that health pretty quickly. Then you're into critical injuries, which could, so you get broken, which is again a familiar theme in free league games, and then that leads into an injury which might kill you in one go, perhaps.
Yeah. So when you attack someone, you inflict damage equal to the base damage rating of the weapon, plus 1 additional point of damage for each 6 or above you've rolled. Which is the eye symbol that they use in this. Base damage of weapons, I can't remember.
Rather than worry about that, we could just skip on and give a sort of overview of, it very much comes across as you jump off a building in this, it's going to have a realistic consequence. You better hope Roy Batty's there to grab you and pull you back up, otherwise you're probably there.
So a 357 subcompact does damage 1. A 357 Magnum does damage 2. 20 gauge shotgun does damage 3, etc. Rifles tend to do damage 2. So your health is, the way you work out your health is
that's a bit complicated.
Your strength, and your agility added together and divided by 4, rounded up.
Yeah. So we worked out the maximum you could get would be, so replicants have +2 to health.
Yeah.
So the maximum you could get would be, what was it?
8. Yeah.
You say
Humans would have 3 to 6. Replicants would have 3 to 8.
Yeah.
Resolve is done the same way, but with the other 2 stats. So with intelligence.
Would humans have 3 to 6, or would they have 1 to 6? Because they don't get the +2, do they?
I think I worked out as 3 to 6.
Okay.
Because it goes on the die. So if you had D in both of those, they'd be D6s. So 6 plus 6 is 12. Divided by 4 is 3.
So it's 3.
Yeah.
Oh, you're right. Okay.
Wow. I'm going to
but that means that a replicant would have 5 to 8.
5 to 8 because they get +2. Yes. Yeah. 5 to 8. Yeah.
Okay. Interesting. So
resolve is done.
It's still possible
with the other stats.
Similarly.
Humans would have 3 to 6 again. Replicants get a -2, so they would be 1 to 4. Yeah.
Well, yes, indeed.
Yeah.
So there's consequences, obviously, of either being reduced. And, we get into the lethality of combat, but then also you get critical stress. This is where stress applies. So I'm just looking at the table. There's 6 results, and they might well be rolling a 1. Let me tell you about my mother. As a replicant, you immediately attack the nearest person, friendly or not. You don't stop, etc. Or rolling a 6 plus. Twice as bright, the stress pushes you forward to performing an extraordinary feat. You gain a bonus action. After that extraordinary action, you end up having to apply the result number 2, which is time to die. You lose the will to live, simply collapse to the ground. So that's a lot on the mechanics. I don't think we need to go into too much more, but
we'll go into more when
covers everything.
When we do the playthrough, right?
Yeah, I think we'll probably see it in action rather than explain it so much. But in terms of the decisions that they've made here, playing as a replicant, it'll be interesting to see how tough they are, whether they're that much above human. Is that going to make a huge difference? What role-playing elements? I suspect that is not such an important feature. I suspect it's because it's a role-play, the interactions, the investigations.
It seems like they could take the physical aspect of the investigations much better, but perhaps not the mental or social aspects of it as well. The way it seems to be set up, that their identity is more fragile, their bodies are much tougher.
Yeah, which is interesting. It's nice to have that sort of division between different types of characters. When you going to get into the rest of the book, and again, of course, it's still beautiful. They've got lots of sort of maps of LA, telling you about all the standard locations, pulling from the lore of Blade Runner, from Blade Runner 2049, but also from the sort of expanded universe stuff like the Blade Runner computer game. So there's references to Runcetters, which if you played the game, you'll know what that's about, on Animoid Road and things. And there's things that are taken from, there's an interview with Niander Wallace, which is very nicely written, and really captures the feel of, I don't know if he's going to be the main antagonist in the game. That's probably not, but he's sort of always going to be a background figure that's you're probably not likely to meet very much, I shouldn't think, but we'll see. The amount of lore in this, if you were buying this purely for the pleasure of learning more about the Blade Runner world, it would scratch that itch. Yeah. I mean, it's as good as a technical manual for like Alien would be. And this is something that 3 League do just so well. We've occasionally criticised the box text in the Alien game. I haven't encountered anything within this that's the same. It's a different, some different stuff, but the quality of the actual world building and capturing the IP is just it's stunning.
It is stunning, yeah. It's gloriously well done. I'm not as deep into the Blade Runner kind of lore and mythology as you are, perhaps, but I'm certainly deeper now, even from a quick skim read. By the time I kind of absorb this fully, I will be well into it, which is very good, because it seems to be another role play focused system. And if I'm role playing in a world, I want to know as much about that world as I want to immerse myself in that world and be able to act as if I'm a native of that world. And you'll definitely be able to do that.
Absolutely. So the interesting thing is the running. So it's about cases and combat and chases and stuff, and it's obviously the game is going to be built around investigations, and it has lots of little features that we've not gone into in any depth about. Sort of, for example, the tracking of time and keeping a countdown in specific cases, because there's the way a case file will work, and so there's mechanics for the GR, the game runner, about how to keep pressure up, or force the group that you're playing with to split. Interesting. I'm not sure it's designed around more than 2 players, a game runner and 2 players. Certainly the first scenario, which I've been digesting, which is beautiful, amazingly put together with lots of sort of Esper images that you actually have an enhanced view of, and things for the players to find. Incredible handouts. Very impressed by it. That story appears on my preliminary sort of flick through to be aimed at 2 players, but could be expanded to more. It certainly makes a certain amount of sense that in the films we're generally seeing a single Blade Runner. Perhaps in the first film, maybe Deckard is unwittingly partnered with Gaff.
And that was your first question to me when we received this as well, wasn't it? It would be interesting how you make a group game around what is very much a solo kind of atmosphere, genre. It's the old hard-boiled detective genre.
Yeah, absolutely, classic.
Really. And it does talk about splitting the group really early in the rulebook.
Yeah.
And actually says that this is an aim. This isn't necessarily something to be avoided. We haven't gone into the mechanics of time, but you have certain shifts, and everybody has to take a certain amount of downtime, etc. So there's always. It explains that there's an element that you're always up against the clock. So you're not going to be able to achieve everything that you need to achieve with everybody doing the same thing. You're going to need to.
If you're all together, absolutely. But of course, because it's not it's a bit like with Alien, where it's a horror film, and you need someone to go off on their own occasionally for are they going to get munched when they do. Time pressure is important, and that it's been used very well. This is even more going to be dependent on those times where one character is going to have to be investigating a situation and the mechanics build towards helping that happen, because you'll fail if you don't.
Yeah.
And there's a lot of reluctance, and it's a D&D thing, Dungeons and Dragons thing, because I don't need to explain what D&D is. It's Dungeons and Dragons. I don't know why I did that. If you're watching this, you've never heard of it. But this idea you can't split the party sort of thing is it's because that's the system where you're expecting to be encountering big battles with large numbers of goblins or a dragon or whatever, and you'll all fail and die if you don't stick together. This is just not that kind of role-playing game, so it makes a lot of sense.
Yeah.
I look forward to running it, and we will be doing it.
Hugely look forward to playing it. Hugely.
Yeah.
Yeah.
We've got the Alien Colonial Marines Operations Manual to run.
Yeah.
That I'm running about to start, and this probably will be our first recorded play after that. I should think.
I think so.
We'll probably
yeah.
prioritise this one.
Yeah.
I will discuss it, but I think that's the plan.
So there's no racing today, but we're both hugely enthusiastic about it, I think we can say.
I mean, I'm drooling over the book already, and I haven't got my hard copy.
Yeah.
So, it's amazing
Yeah.
to look at, and yeah. But full review will come, and considering the amount of time we spent talking about it, who knows how long that full review will be.
That was our quick look, first look.
40-odd
Blade
minutes
Runner. Blade Runner from Free League, and we will see you next time with some more from the
We will.
Script.